Hello, fourth grade RPS students. Welcome to week 5, day 1 of RPS at Home for Language Arts. My name is Mrs. Vasquez, and I am a teacher at Obama Elementary School. All right, so for this week, we are going to be talking about vocabulary. And while we are learning new vocabulary, we're also going to be doing that through poetry. So we're going to be learning new vocabulary words that are in our poems, but we're also going to be learning vocabulary words that have to do with poetry specifically. All right, so let's get started. First, let's talk about what poems are. Poems are just a fun way, a creative way of writing. Your favorite song is actually a poem. That artist just took it and put it to music. Okay, poems can rhyme, they cannot rhyme, they can look one way when one poet does it or look another way. They are a very creative way of writing and can be very fun to write and read as well. I'm very excited to be teaching you guys this week. So let's talk about what we're going to be doing today. So again, this is week 5, day 1 of Language Arts, and my name is Mrs. Vasquez. So let's look at our agenda, the order of things we're going to be doing. I already introduced this week's SOL, that is vocabulary, and today's learning goal I will introduce in a second. Then we will be learning new vocabulary. We will be learning vocabulary specific to poems and specific to the poem we are reading. Then we will read our poem at the zoo and discuss our new vocabulary and poetry device. We will then review to make sure we learned that target goal today. And then I have assigned some independent practice on the RPS at Home page for you to do. So before we get started, let me talk about what you're going to need for this. First, on the RPS at Home page where you found this video, there is a chart that looks like this. If you are able to, go ahead and print that out. Pause the video and print that out. If you are unable to, you can just do what I did. I made my own chart. So just title it, just like the other one. Put term, definition, my example, and then as the week goes on, we're going to use this chart all week and we're going to fill it in as we learn. Okay? So go ahead and pause the video and either print that chart or make your own like mine. And I'll pull up the other one for you to pause it on. Share my screen. All right, so go ahead and pause the video and make your chart or print this one out. You will also need to pull up the Common Lit poem for today. It is also on the RPS at Home page where this video was. You don't have to pull this up. You don't have to print it out. You can always just listen to me read it, but it may be easier for some to follow along if you have it in front of you. So go ahead and pause the video and get At the Zoo pulled up. All right, so let's talk about our I can statement for today. Our I can statement is, I can identify and describe alliteration and rhyming in a poem. So if you look at your charts, alliteration and rhyme were two of the terms that you found on there, or if you made your own, alliteration and rhyme. So we're going to go ahead and write alliteration and rhyme for our first two terms. Let's go ahead and fill in the definition of those two terms. So the definition of alliteration is the same sound used at the beginning of words. And an example of that would sound like Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Most of those words in that line all start with the P sound. So alliteration, the same sound used at the beginning of words. And then we are also going to be talking about rhyme today, words that end with the same sound. Those are the same rhyming words you learned all the way back in pre-K and kindergarten: cat, hat, mat, sat. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video and fill in those definitions in your chart underneath the definition column. Again, by the end of this, you want to be able to identify and describe both those terms. Before we read our poem, let's review our parts of a poem. So poems do not have paragraphs, they have stanzas. So this group of lines that are together with breaks after and before them. Poems also have lines, okay? They're the individual horizontal set of words together. Now, we don't want to get confused with a line in a sentence. Okay, this would be a sentence where the period is. The lines are just that individual, that one line grouped together. And then poems also have something called a refrain. Refrain is something that repeats in the poem. It's a lot like in a chorus of a song that will repeat throughout the song. So a refrain is a lot like a chorus in a song. All right, let's talk about some other vocabulary that we will find in our poem today. Our poem is entitled At the Zoo. One of the words you will find in here is mutton. Mutton is the meat from a sheep. You don't need to write this down or anything. This is just for you to keep in the back of your mind while we're reading the poem to help you understand it better. So mutton is the meat from a sheep, just like we call the meat from a cow, we call that beef. Mutton is the meat from a sheep. Maw is the mouth of an animal. Waddle is to walk with short steps in a clumsy fashion. Sometimes we describe the walking of a penguin, a waddle. And smelt is just an old term for smelled. So smelled and smelt are synonyms. All right, so keep those definitions in the back of your mind, and we're going to get started on our poem. So the title of our poem today is At the Zoo. While we read At the Zoo, I want you to be thinking about alliteration and rhyme and be looking for examples of those in our poem. First, I saw the white bear. Then I saw the black. Then I saw the camel with a hump upon his back. Then I saw a gray wolf with mutton on his maw. Then I saw a wombat waddle in the straw. Then I saw the elephant waving. Then I saw the elephant waving his trunk. Then I saw the monkeys. Mercy, how unpleasantly they smelt. All right, so we want to be looking for alliteration and rhyme in this poem. Let's start with alliteration. So I saw two examples of alliteration in this poem. First one I noticed at line 4 of the second stanza. Line 4 has wombat waddle. They both start with the same sound. So that is an example of alliteration. I want you to pause the video and look for our second example of alliteration in this poem. All right, so hopefully you found in line 6, monkeys, mercy, both start with the M sound. So that is an example of alliteration. Now, I want you to go back to your chart, and you can either use the examples from this poem, At the Zoo, for your My Examples column, or you can think of your own examples to put in this column. Pause the video and go ahead and do that. All right, so now we're going to look for examples of rhyming. Okay, I saw two examples of rhyming. The first one was in line 1 and in line 2, black and back. I want you to find the other example of rhyming in this poem. Should be pretty easy to do. Go ahead and pause the video and look for those. Okay, you should have saw that in line 3. This is all line 3. Ma, and then line 4, you should have found straw. Ma and straw are 2 examples of rhyming in this poem. So go back to your chart. You should have the word, the definition, and then for examples, either come up with your own rhyming words, or you can use the examples from this poem to fill that in. Okay, so let's review what we talked about today. We learned the terms alliteration and rhyming. We can now identify them and come up with examples of them. And we also learned some new vocabulary words that were in our poem. Tomorrow, we are going to be doing the same thing. You're going to need the same chart for tomorrow. We're going to continue filling it in as the week goes on. We're going to be doing a new poem tomorrow with new poetic devices and vocabulary. Now I want you to go back to your RPS at home page and do the independent practice I have assigned you. It is a good poem to start the week off of poetry. So go do that now, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Bye.